in the Racing Point.
Hello and welcome to the video. This time I'll be reviewing another scale 1/18th Minichamps diecast model, and I have here the Racing Point. Oh.
Bruh.
Sorry there, bud. I mean Racing Point Mercedes RP20 from the 70th anniversary Grand Prix that was held at Silverstone back in 2020. This is the number 27 car as driven by German Nico Hülkenberg. In this video I'll be giving my honest thoughts about this model car, what I like about it or what I think could be improved. But first, let me tell you about the driver in this model car, Nico Hülkenberg. Yeah, indeed. Okay, thanks, Daniel. For those who are only here for the model car itself, no worries, you can skip Pepperoni Pizza to the next chapter by selecting it in the timeline below. The case of Nico Hülkenberg is a bit of a curious one. He made his Formula 1 debut back in 2010 already with Williams after he dominated the Formula 3 and GP2 categories. It was a difficult first year for Nico and the team dropped him for the next season. He did however surprise everyone by taking the maiden pole position at Interlagos for the Brazilian Grand Prix by over a second. Yes, you heard that right, a second. In a Williams. Even though he fell back in the race to 8th position a lap down, he reminded everyone he was still the real deal. Hulk joined the Force India team for the next season as a test driver and began his long-lasting relationship with the Silverstone-based team. He stayed there from 2011 until 2016, with 1 year at Sauber in 2013 being the odd one out. In 2017 then he had his big break, moving to a factory outfit, namely Renault. He spent 3 years at Régie, but the success everyone had expected never came. He had some solid drives, but never seemed to be lucky at the right time. He somehow failed to reach the podium at either Force India or Renault, and this slowly became a running gag. His best opportunities came in Brazil 2012, when he threw away a possible win even, crashing into Lewis Hamilton, battling for the lead, and again at the 2019 German Grand Prix, sliding off track whilst running at the front in tricky conditions. To be fair, the likes of Leclerc or even Lewis Hamilton went off at the same part of the track, but this was a huge opportunity missed to get that podium monkey off his back. Renault didn't renew his contract after 2019 and Nico was without a drive. Fast forward to 2020 then and the Silverstone doubleheader. Just before the race, Sergio Perez had contracted COVID-19. The former Force India team, now renamed Racing Point, called up their old friend Nico Hülkenberg to replace the Mexican. The Hulk thus became Hülkenberg. Now the 2020 Racing Point was a very good car and had posted some good results already. That didn't come as a huge surprise as it was a carbon copy of the Mercedes W10 that dominated the 2019 season. Surely this time for the Hulk, a podium was very much on the cards. For the first race, Nico qualified a respectable 13th, a pretty solid result given the fact that he had never even sat in the car before that weekend. Sadly, his car failed to start in the garage before the race had even started, and that was that. Luckily for him, Checo still hadn't fully recovered the next weekend when the second round of the Silverstone doubleheader, dubbed the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, took place. This round had been named as such because it was, well, quite obviously, the 70th anniversary of the first Formula 1 start at Silverstone in 1950. But yeah, Nico thus received a new opportunity and again didn't disappoint. He qualified an excellent third on the grid, much to the surprise of everyone. In the race he again fell back, not helped by a bad tyre strategy. He did manage to score some points, finishing behind his teammate Lance Stroll in 7th. Nico had yet another Hülkenberg moment in 2020, subbing now for Lance Stroll at the Eiffel Grand Prix. He was called up at the very last moment, so much even that he had to use his old Renault colored helmet instead of the pink one he used at the 70th anniversary Grand Prix. Hulk qualified last, but moved up the ranks during the race to finish a fantastic 8th, earning himself the title Driver of the Day. Nico is still part of the team, now going through life as Aston Martin. In fact, the team once again called up their super sub at the start of the 2022 season when Sebastian Vettel was ruled out of the first 2 races because of COVID. His full-time Formula 1 career seems to be over, however, sadly never having reached the peaks it potentially had. Even rivals like Alonso always considered him as a future great, and Nico's surprising Le Mans win in 2015 on his debut with Porsche certainly backs this up. But it still remains a mystery to this day how he never managed to achieve these heights in Formula 1. This Nico Hülkenberg version of the Racing Point RP20 scale 1/18 was announced shortly after the race by Minichamps. They first released Austrian Grand Prix versions of Stroll and Perez. This Hulk version only came out now a good few months after the other versions. A Sakir Grand Prix winner car of Perez has also been announced, but for some reason this will be a resin model rather than these diecast cars. Rival brand Spark also made several versions of the RP20 in scale 1/18. I don't think they have planned to release the Hülkenberg version too. As you can see, I also have the very limited half-scale version of the Schubert helmet Nico wore at Grand Prix. In fact, I've done a review video of this mini helmet on my channel before. You can watch it by clicking here in the top corner, or to wait until the end of the video for another link to it. In that review, I mistakenly said Nico wore that helmet for both Grand Prix at Silverstone. He actually used a black Stilo helmet for the British Grand Prix, the first race, and then this pink one for the 70th anniversary round. The model then comes in the regular Minichamps black checkered flag windowed box. On the right side flap there is all of the model's information. So BWT Racing Point F1 Team Mercedes RP20 Nico Hülkenberg 70th Anniversary Grand Prix 2020. Whew, and it's limited to 432 pieces. The model info is on a sticker too, and not printed on the flap as it's normally the case. And on the bottom then there is all the licensing info as usual. Inside then the model is set on the same base all regular Formula 1 themed models come in. So the packaging is nothing special really, just the regular Minichamp stuff. So let's have a look now at the model itself, and at first sight I would say it looks rather good. The pink color of course catches your eye immediately, and I think it's a striking livery, but for some other people it sticks out like a sore thumb. I do actually prefer the first iteration of the BWT pink themed car, the 2017 Force India, that had these bubbles in the pink part too. Because of the livery you might not immediately tell, but I think Minichamps reused the tooling of the Mercedes W10. Well, in fact I'm pretty sure of that, as you can see some Mercedes wording on the bottom of the model. And they tried to cover it, but it's still faintly visible. Now, I don't blame Minichamps for doing that. The Racing Point was almost an exact copy of the Mercedes, so I think it's quite normal they would use the same tooling and as many similar parts as possible. There are a few obvious differences, like the side pod turning vanes for example, or these pitot tubes on the nose. Onto the pros and cons then, and I'll start out with the cons so we can end on the positive note, which is always nicer of course. The first negative point is the figurine's helmet. The shape looks nice though, it really looks like a Schubert helmet and even features the distinct rear spoiler. But the letdown on the helmet is the visor though. It's again the same bad brown visor decal Minichamps always uses, which doesn't look good at all. The visor shape then is all wrong too. It's way too big and somehow also too narrow, as seen from the front. And I don't really understand why this is, as Minichamps uses the correct Schubert visor shape decal on the Verstappen and Mick Schumacher models. Another thing I noticed is the lack of the aluminium detailing parts on the bargeboards. It's just a tiny detail, but it makes it look much more lifelike I think. And this is a detail that is featured on the Spark models. Another thing I'm not too fond of is the way this supposed slit looks like behind the part where the halo connects to the cockpit sides. It's just a black decal instead of a real hole or slit if you want, like you have on the BBR Ferrari models for instance. And the same goes for the little vents next to it as well. A minor negative point then is the lack of finer detail on the front wing cascades, like the photo etched slot gap separators for instance, and rear wing, also the main plane, which is just one piece instead of having the upper flap separated. The end plates of the rear wing then also don't feature any cutout gills here on the top part. Finally, the last con, and it's not really a Minichamps' fault, but I received the model like this, in this unfortunate state let's say, and I was pretty disappointed at first, but luckily I managed to piece everything back together. But let's now focus on the positives, and thank goodness there are quite a lot of them. First, there's the overall shape, which I think is spot on. I really like the small details that are featured on the front wing, like the small sensors on the inner end plates. And their positioning is also much nicer than on the Spark model, where they look like they are glued on top of the end plates instead of on the insides. The cape underneath the nose then is nicely shaped, better than on the 2020 Mercedes models for instance. The suspension and the small details on the tub looks nice too, especially those small flow controllers on the flank of the cockpit. The detail on the barge boards then is very refined, lots of cuts and small separate pieces. I then also like the separate boomerang flow conditioner that is on top of the halo. The cockpit then doesn't look too bad with the serrated edged window in front. The steering wheel looks quite good too, and has been molded to the real Racing Point wheel, so it's not a generic shaped one like on the Spark model for instance. One of my favorite parts though is the floor. All of the slits and gills are cut out, and this is no real surprise as this was the case too on the W10 Mercedes model, which well, essentially uses the same floor. The detailing on the rear of the model then is also really nice. The exhaust looks good, exiting in between the rear wing pillars, with the wastegate pipes going on either side of them. The end plates of the rear wing actually have cuts in the small gills on the bottom, even though all of the gills aren't cut out as we saw earlier. The detail on the diffuser then is not too bad either, with these interesting back curling ends on this extra diffuser beam wing. Finally, the wheels then look quite good too. There are different color wheel nuts on either side, and the rear wheels have this interesting aerodynamic surface on the inner rims. As per usual, I did some upgrades to my model. On the helmet I've tried to cover up the bad visor decal as much as possible with this reflective tinting film, and this makes for a much more realistic look as the real helmet had the same kind of tint, well yeah, more or less. The wheels have received an upgrade as well, with all the handwritten tire markings and the barcode decals. You might notice that it says SP on the tires for Sergio Perez and not NH for Nico Hülkenberg. This is probably due to the fact that Pirelli didn't have any stencils prepared with Nico's initials. Also before the race it was not yet clear if Checo had not yet fully recovered for the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, so yeah, this is my guess as to why it still says SP on the tires. Not a lot of upgrades needed to be done on this model though. It does make the car look better, I think. Shame that Minichamps doesn't do these small extra details themselves. I don't really mind doing these mods, but it would be nice for everyone if Minichamps would put them on the models as standard. And they have done so in the past on seemingly random models, so why not do it on all of them? So in the end I think it's a fairly good model by Minichamps. I'm certainly happy they made it in the first place, and I never thought it would be as good as it actually is. The collectors who own the 2020 Mercedes W10 from Minichamps will know exactly what I mean, as it is essentially the same model, just in slightly different colors. The model is something different with its bright pink livery. I like that it stands out, and I also like the underdog story behind it as well. Of course, since I had the mini helmet already, I really wanted to add the Modelcar to the collection too then. Even though I was shocked at first that my model was heavily damaged and that the visor detail on the helmet of the model was so bad, I'm actually pretty pleased with my purchase. That being said, I do think the upgrades I've done on my model were very much necessary though, especially the visor on the helmet needed a lot of attention. To finish out the video, I'd like to ask you, what is your impression of the model? Do you like the pronounced livery or does it pain your eyes? And what is your opinion on Nico Hülkenberg? Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, I'd like to thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like down below so I can keep making these videos, and subscribe to the channel as it really helps out. Also check out the review video of the Hulk mini helmet that he used at race as well. And hopefully I'll see you again in the next one.